Brown to move the motion. Mr. Geoffrey.
I beg to move, Mr. Chairman, that this House has considered food production and the Environmental Land Management Scheme, ELMS, and I begin by drawing attention to my register of members' interests that I am an arable farmer. Mr. Davis, it is a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I have been delighted that I've been able to secure this debate today on food production and the Environmental Land Management Scheme. I would also like to take this moment to thank the DEFRA Secretary of State and Minister Prentice, who is here today, and Minister Power for addressing us at the highly successful launch of the UK Agricultural Partnership at the Royal Agricultural University in the heart of my constituency last Thursday. As more and more land is taken out of food production for environmental schemes, we face the dangerous consequences of becoming reliant on importing higher and higher amounts of food. In short, what this debate is all about, putting the F back in DEFRA. Food should be at the heart of the ELMS policy and should be classed as a public good for public money under the scheme. And I am aware now that there is a large UK food security report 2021, but this is largely full of very dry facts. What we're looking from here on inwards is some policy to underpin that. So this is a timely debate because the Public Accounts Committee, of which I am Deputy Chair, carried out a detailed inquiry into the ELMS scheme, publishing a report on its findings at the beginning of the year. Now we've left the EU, we have a once-in-a-lifetime chance, Mr. Chairman, to completely replace our agricultural support system with an ambitious post-Brexit agricultural policy, which supports the government's ambitious 25-year environmental plan. Our environmental policies should be joined up with agricultural policy that encourages sustainable food production here at home. Alongside sustainability, we need to help the agricultural sector's competitiveness and resilience within the macroeconomic trade and regulatory context. At the heart of ELMS is the changes to the mechanism for distributing farm funding, previously done by the direct CAP payments, to a system that will launch fully in 2024, where farmers will be encouraged towards environmental and productivity improvements. The government has stated that all the objectives of ELMS will be delivered for just £2 billion, a target pointed out by the committee as highly ambitious during the hearing we held last October. As we all know, there are three key elements to the project: the Sustainable Farming Initiative for all farmers to be paid to manage their land in even more environmentally friendly ways, the local nature recovery for more complex and collaborative projects, and the landscape recovery for large-scale projects such as afforestation, rewilding, and re-wetted peat. But there are clear structural and timetabling issues within the ELMS implementation, as details still are not as detailed as we would expect by this stage in the scheme. It is not apparent what the aims or objectives or metrics for supporting over £2 billion of public funding are, whether the schemes will provide good value for money, or how they will help in achieving the government's 25-year environmental plan and net zero by 2050. Some farmers are concerned about the practicality of implementing the schemes on time, which, due to the natural cycle of animals and plants, can take up to 2 years or more to implement, which is why timely information from DEFRA is so vital. The government have trialled the first phase of ELMS programmes with the SFA pilot last year, from which they will draw information before they begin the scheme properly this year. In December, the government produced a policy paper on how they will expand the scheme over the next 3 years. But this information really is too late for farmers to change their plans and cropping plans. What is clear is that this scheme will require a huge amount of land. For example, the Committee on Climate Change has a target for 30 to 50,000 hectares of forestry to be planted every year between 24 and 2050. An enormous amount of land. I will happily give way to my honourable friend from North Durham.
I'd like to thank my honourable friend for giving way, and also thank him for securing this debate today. One of the concerns that my farmers in North West Durham have, especially as they are looking to diversify, they are looking to specialise in their production, but forestry has only to be part of the solution. Instead, it cannot be there as a replacement for food production, because, as he points out, those food security issues, we've seen it with gas recently and our heating system, but food security is also going to be so important into the future as well.
And I think he could have rewritten my speech, but if he is able to stay to the end, which I know he has other engagements, he will hear me say almost exactly that. Now, at our hearing, Mr. Chairman, officials at the PAC, the top officials, were certain that ELMS will promote increased efficiency on the remaining land that isn't going into environmental schemes. But these top civil servants from DEFRA were not able to tell the PAC how much more food will need to be imported as a result. In 1984, the UK's self-sufficiency when it came to food was 78%. But by 2019, it was down to 64% NFU data. However, according to the government statistics, just 55% of the food consumed in the UK was supplied by the UK, this being the origin of domestic production minus UK exports. In 2019, we exported 11.5 billion worth of fruit and veg, and exporting just 1.3 billion, importing 6.6 billion of meat and exporting just 2.1 billion. From a balance of trade point of view, it is critical that we reverse this trend, bolster our own home production, as well as finding opportunities to export more of our excellent, high-quality British food. Happily give way to my honourable friend.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. I think that the Trade Department, along with DEFRA and with the AHDB, we can actually do a real trade drive to get experts across the world out there to actually promote great British food. And I think at the moment we're not getting our act together fast enough.
I couldn't agree more with my honourable friend, who's chairman of the excellent chairman of the EFRA Select Committee. He's 100% right. There are a lot of opportunities out there in the world, all over the world, for us to export our produce. So as an island nation, it is vital that we are able to feed our population. And considering how we have such a temperate climate, well suited to agriculture, we have all the means to increase our self-sufficiency. There is also an argument that we have a moral duty to maintain our food security. With a growing global population leading to increased food demands alongside climate change, which will have a disproportionate impact on certain countries, it is imperative that we ensure that our own needs are met rather than just being more reliant on other countries around the world. Happily give way.
I entirely agree with what the member's saying about the need to improve our food security, to grow far more in this country and to consume it here as well. But doesn't the government's current policy in terms of pursuing trade deals around the world completely undermine that? Mm-hmm. It seems like the whole policy is based on trying to reduce support for farmers in this country and to chase cheap food imports from elsewhere.
True. I'm delighted to have the support of the Honourable Lady. The number of times I have debated with her in studios in Bristol, and we've been at odds, to actually have her support is somewhat amazing. I was on a programme the other day agreeing with Diana, the member for Edmonton as well, and I've never agreed with her either. I don't know. The whips must be getting worried that I might defect soon. So even as a global trading nations, and this comes to the heart of my honourable friend's point, shocks can expose real fragilities on any reliance on imports. The current severe spike in energy price is as a result of what happens when we increasingly rely on imports and become vulnerable to the global squeeze on energy and gas supplies last year, and indeed going into this year. With technical and geopolitical issues impacting supply across Europe, we have been hit hard for a number of reasons, including our storage capacity, which is one of the lowest in Europe, and our demand, which is one of the highest. So imports will always play a critical role in our food system, but our own self-sufficiency must, I would say to the Minister, be taken more seriously by government. It is stagnating, and the public will not thank us in future if there is ever a world shortage of food. Prices rockets, and indeed shelves in supermarkets are emptied of certain commodities. While the nation is encouraged to be healthier and eat more fruit and veg, our domestic production of these products falls below our potential. For example, the nation is only 18% self-sufficient in fruit, 55% in vegetables, and 71% in potatoes. For both veg and potatoes, this has fallen by 16% in the past 20 years, despite the sector demonstrating sustained investment. The entire economy is aiming to build back better, build back greener from the COVID-19 pandemic. British farming, I would say to the Minister, can be central to that green recovery. We have a golden opportunity to place food security fairly at the centre of our food system and become a global leader in sustainable, high-quality food production. And the government has a crucial role to play in this. Food security should be at the heart of government policy, and there needs to be an annual reporting system to Parliament to ensure that we do not allow our domestic food production to diminish. UK farmers are best placed to implement many of these environmental schemes, whilst at the same time maintaining the countryside to the high standard that the public have come to accept. I don't think the public are going to welcome the look of the countryside just going to waste growing brambles and shrubs. It feels highly counterintuitive to place such a high environmental standards here that food production becomes so unprofitable that we need to import more. Not only does physically importing food produce greenhouse gases, but relying on farmers from the rest of the world to produce our food here in the UK is simply exporting our environmental problems and responsibility to those other countries around the world with lower plant and animal standards. The public, I believe, place real value on high standards of animal welfare, environmental protection, and climate ambition of the British farmers. We cannot guarantee or enforce these high standards on farmers from other countries around the world. And it would be morally unjustifiable if a UK farmer were put at a competitive disadvantage by importing foods with lower standards, the point that the Honourable Gentleman was making. The innovation I've seen from UK farmers throughout my lifetime, working towards environmental goals, has been incredible. The NFU has been working with its stakeholders to outline the policy mechanism for agriculture to reach net zero by 2040, a critical goal. Essentially, I believe that the best way to reach our environmental targets is by supporting British farmers, not making food production an unsustainable economic model. The second of the key issues that the National Audit Office report produced, on which our PAC inquiry majored on, is that without subsidies, most farms in England, this is with NAO, who is highly respected, make an average profit of just £22,800 a year after all of their labour and investment. And a third of farms would not make any profit at all. That makes the sector pretty financially vulnerable. Therefore, there is a real fear that small, tenanted and upland farmers who are operating on wafer-thin margins, many will go out of business. And that's, the consequence of that is simply that the average size of farms will increase and their environmental benefits that they provide will be lost. ELMS should provide advice and funding to help these small farmers diversify. The Future Farming Programme for England, which will replace the direct payments with a new scheme based on public money for public goods, will see small farms have their direct payments reduced from December 20, and 50% will be lost by 2025. So there is real concern that the amounts available on some of the options will be completely unprofitable and too complicated that many farmers will simply not take them up, especially if they do not have the administrative capacity to negotiate the complicated bureaucracy. This could mean that only large institutional landowners, such as the National Trust or RSBB, will benefit from these government schemes. And it would be quite wrong if these large institutional landowners receive a bigger and bigger share of the agricultural subsidy cake when they are providing less and less food each year. ELMS should have a part to play in protecting small and tenanted and upland farmers, which I class as less than 100 acres, alongside significant environmental aims for such a policy. The final problem I would like to take up with the Minister under ELMS is the average age of farmers, which is currently 59. I know from my own farming situation, and it's been discussed here, so I will disclose it, is in North Norfolk, in the constituency of my honourable friend. I am delighted to see here, and I have issued an invitation today for him to come and visit my farm. I know from my own farming situation that my son, who is in his 30s, is much more adaptable to new technology than I am. and which would have two key effects of increasing productivity and innovation. Elms should have a structural element to help young people who wish to enter agriculture, particularly those leaving education, because again, agriculture tends to be a highly risky, intensive capital business combined with very low returns. DEFRA is providing money to councils, landowners and county farm estates via the new entrance support scheme to help support young people joining the sector with access to land, infrastructure and support for successful and innovative businesses. My own farming business, which I've referred to, provides an opportunity for 3 different businesses to get onto the farming ladder. Chris, my long-term farming contractor, Ben, who runs a very successful outdoor pig breeding business, and we are currently discussing an arrangement with a lady who has a rotating ewe flock of sheep to graze our increasingly overwintered green cover crops. Existing farmers could do more to help young people into agricultural employment and business. All in all, if farmers are to survive, they're going to have to produce better returns, either from increased productivity, government subsidies, or increased prices from the market. Otherwise, many will not survive. The consequence of that will be that the average farm size will increase, employment in agriculture will fall, social cohesion in the rural areas will be lost. The government is now formulating the new policy on elms. We need to see much more detail before it is finally launched in 2024. And I appreciate that at the beginning of this year, a lot more has been published, but I still don't actually get the full sense of where the government's aims for elms really are. As I've said already, we cannot become over-reliant on other countries to fulfil our food needs. We have the means to produce food here in more sustainable and smarter ways. But to do this, we must support farmers across the country and not make industry so unprofitable that only the largest farms survive. The government should be much more ambitious with their aim of producing food in the UK. Well over 60% of all the food we eat should be produced by UK farmers. And that would well and truly put the F back in DEFRA.
Thank you. The question is that this House has considered food production